So hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is consumer research for software and technology. So for those of you that are joined today, I'm sure you've got some kind of interest in basically consumers, products that consumers use that are what we would say is something that's kind of like online or through an app or through a device. So not something that's necessarily tangible unless it's used through another kind of form of technology. I'll give examples of what I mean by that. I realize that's a really broad description. Today's webinar is being recorded. So I'll be sending out the recording after the webinar. So if you miss anything, don't worry, it'll be sent out. There's also going to be the chance for a Q&A towards the end. So if you've got any questions as we go through, don't worry, make a note of them in the little Q&A box that you've got in your Zoom bar. And I'll answer those towards the end as well. So just an overview of what we're going to talk about today. So I'll be looking at the consumer technology industry. Obviously, that's very broad, and I've broken down a few kind of categories to focus on today. That'll be very applicable to other categories as well, but it just means we've got to kind of focus because, as I said, it can be a really broad topic otherwise. So it's kind of narrowing it down a little bit. I'll be looking at global regulations for advertising because we'll look at the kind of reasons that technology might be researched, and some of that is to help towards advertising and marketing. So I'll make sure we're looking at the regulations there as well. I'll be looking at claim substantiation methods because, again, that's a really good reason for consumer research. But we're looking at some case studies. So we can look at consumer research itself, why it's used for technology, what the legal implications may be in terms of how you use that data. And I'll give you some good tips there as we go along. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Carys, and I am the Regulatory Director at Ayton Global Research. So I've been here since 2012, which is a while now. So obviously I've had a lot of experience in conducting lots of different studies. So everything from cosmetics to food to technology itself. So one of the case studies I'll go through today is one of the studies that I've designed and worked with on a client. So you'll get an idea of kind of what we did there to look at a case study. Essentially, that's what a case study is. But basically, I'm a specialist in regulations that are to do with anything to do with advertising or product testing or consumer research or study design. So that is where my speciality lies. And you can always feel free to reach out to me if you need any help with any sort of things like that. So, as I said, today I want to break down the market for consumer technology and software. So I've looked at two different kind of categories that are very popular at the moment within that overall category. And you'll see what I mean. So one is the mobile apps market, because mobile apps have become a huge market within software, and probably one of the most easy to access as a consumer. So Grand View Research have said that the global mobile app market size was valued at $154 billion in 2019 and is expected to have a compound annual growth rate of 11.5%. So from year on year to 2020 to 2027, that is a huge growth rate. So not only are they popular now, but it will continue to grow and grow and grow. And this is generally due to the smartphone proliferation. Everyone's got access to a smartphone now, so everyone's got access to download an app. Increased internet penetration. So again, almost globally, everyone uses the internet now. So obviously people have access again to these apps. And growing technologies, so things like machine learning and AI have all become really popular within apps. And the more that technology grows, the more it kind of grows within professional industry. It then goes to consumer industry. And as we know, you think of like the, what's it called? Oculus, I can't remember what it's called. The Xbox thing, we have a headset and it's all AI. There are so many things coming out now where people can use that same technology, but through a mobile app. So it's all of these things are getting kind of made more personal and more specific to people that can use it on their phones as well. So it will continue to really grow. There's an application market share that they've put out this chart as well. So at the top, we've got gaming, and you can see that's nearly a half of what the mobile apps are used for. So it's huge. You've also got music and entertainment, health and fitness, social networking, retail and e-commerce, and then others as well. So our main ones is going to be people kind of shopping, going on social network, tracking things like their health and fitness, getting things like their music and their entertainment, like streaming websites, things like that. But actually gaming is really the majority there. So I want to talk about gaming as well, the gaming market. So I've got this information from Mordor Intelligence, and they've got some information that the gaming market was valued at 173 billion in 2021, and again expected to reach a value of 314 billion with a compound annual growth rate of 9.64. So again, also a steadily growing industry. So it's something we can really keep an eye on. The reason the gaming industry in particular had such a huge growth is because of COVID-19. So people that maybe gamed a little bit were finding they had all of this free time to game. And those who maybe didn't game at all were now doing it. I mean, I remember with my partner, I never really go on like games or anything like that. But yeah, we were all playing, kind of me and my housemates, my partner, we're all playing games together because there was nothing else to do. You've watched enough TV, you've played enough card games, let's get the consoles out. So yeah, literally, as it said, attracted hundreds of thousands of new visitors to online traffic. And it's meant that kind of addiction that gaming can bring in has continued to go. So this massive surge in new players have stayed as continued customers as well. So they also had this kind of chart, which I found really helpful, kind of overall information. The largest market is the Asia Pacific market. So again, interesting to think about if that's where you're launching things like games or anything like that. The fastest growing is the Middle East and Africa. So these are kind of really good targets to have in mind if you're releasing games, make them appropriate for these countries, make them accessible for these countries, because that is where you're seeing a huge growth in consumers. We've got our big players in the game: Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, EA, Tencent. These are all companies that I'm sure we're very familiar with hearing. I can hear things bashing around. I don't know if you're in the UK, but there's a huge storm outside. I can just hear everything clanging around our garden. So I apologize if that comes onto the microphone at all. But so yeah, huge players in the game. But the reason is I'm saying mobile apps, gaming, the things are quite interconnected, and they're really where our mind goes when we talk about consumer software and technology. These are huge categories within the industry that we want to look at. So why do we want to test technology? So as you know, this whole webinar is about consumer research for technology. So why test it? Well, the main thing is getting consumer insights from your target consumers. So consumer research is all about target consumers, and you want to get the insight from them in particular, and that will help aid your product development. So no matter what stage you're at in your development, once you feel like you're ready to kind of get people to test it out, by getting the people that are going to purchase your game to test it, you'll get the best feedback possible and the best insights possible to not only know how you can develop the product, but know how you can then market it. So the next reason is claim substantiation, because it's not really something we think about as much with technology. You know, when we think about cosmetics, you can easily say 80% of people felt the mascara made their eyelashes longer. And it's not necessarily something you think about technology, but actually, I don't know for you guys, I see loads of adverts all the time, and it might be something like for a fitness ad, and it's like 80% of our users have found that since using this, they have got healthier life choices or something like that. So there's still claims that are used within software and technology, and using it within your marketing is really, really important. Like I said, things like that are the things that catch your consumers' eyes. And again, if you test your product on your target consumer, not only do you get your insights, you get information about what are the claims that they want to see on the packaging and what did they have to say about it. Because if your target consumer is testing it and they're saying those things, and you say that back to your target consumer in your marketing, you're going to have really successful marketing and advertising, because you're not kind of predicting what they want to hear. You're making sure you've listened to them and you're repeating back what they want to hear. So it's a really great way of getting that kind of information. It also helps with things like product and brand perceptions. So again, it might be that you think a product's going to be perceived one way in one market and another in another market. And it's really just getting feedback that is specific. And even the branding, you know, if you've got an app that is, again, is for health and fitness or something, and you ask people, what do you think of the branding? And they go, actually, it looked more like, I don't know, a gaming app or a food app. They might not want to, it might not be something that would ever kind of catch people's eye. And that's really what we want to try and do. You can also do things like benchmark testing. So it's not as tangible again as like a product comparison, but it's definitely something you can do where you look at maybe apps that are currently accessed by consumers. So again, if you've got a new gaming app and you know there's a really similar game out there, you can get users that have usually used that game and compare where do you sit within that, or maybe do lots of different games or something like that and see where you sit within those markets, within that market, sorry, against your competitors, and really see what happens there. You can also benchmark against, say, if you did have a game or an app that's already popular, but you want to make some significant changes to it. You can find out what your consumers think about those changes, and whether they would still want to use your product or use your, use your app or anything like that. So it's a really great way of being able to have some product development and make some confident decisions about any changes you're making, or just some confident decisions about where you sit within the market. And investigating new markets. So I've mentioned this before, but say, for example, you're currently in the US, and then, so the biggest market is Asia Pacific. So you want to launch your app there, and the fastest growing is Middle East and Africa. So you want to launch your app there. You need to make sure that each market is having the correct reaction to your product that you want them to have. And it might be there's some small changes that you have to make that appropriate. I know we've worked with a company before that had a very classic gaming image of a woman, like kind of like an armored bikini on the kind of side of their game and everything like that. Then going into the Middle East, they found actually it was quite offensive. They didn't want to see kind of lots of bare flesh, everything like that. So it was making sure that before they kind of launched there, they're thinking about all of that imagery, because obviously they can just get shut down before they've even got a chance to start. Because obviously in one territory, it's more appealing than another. And that's all kind of on to do with cultural things as well. But there's obviously lots of other things in terms of what's actually appealing to the consumer. So it's really making sure that you're getting the best information about how your product will be received somewhere before you kind of jump in with 2 feet and find that actually you've gone there, you get a bad rep, and it's really hard to build that back up again. You can get things like testimonials and reviews, and also photos and videos. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail now. So testimonials and reviews, obviously you can get reviews kind of otherwise, like if people use your product, but if you want to, like, say if you're launching something new and you haven't necessarily got those customers already, getting testimonials through consumer research can really help give you that kind of independent consumer voice, which will really help that kind of encourage people to use your product. And same with photos and videos as well. It could be photo like images of how the app has helped them. That's what I've got some examples of. Also a video of using the app. And it really, really helps, again, just have that kind of real consumer voice communicated back to people, even if you haven't necessarily got the reviews in the first place. And there's also some legislative things we need to take in consideration. So I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail now. Sorry, I just had to have a little drink. This is some stuff I've taken from Noom Mood, from their website, which is an app that is used for, well, it says the thing is more joy, less stress. So it's about learning lessons and kind of changing behavior, so you improve your mood and have less stress. So it kind of gives little bits of information based on, it's kind of that AI sort of situation, based on people's habits. What can they do to improve this personalized situation? This says, rooted in psychological principles, our lessons help you develop coping mechanisms to manage better with your stress. Through behavior change, the program will empower you to take control and build resilience so you can worry less, sleep better, and ultimately feel happier. So that's the overall idea with it. They've also got on their website this thing, real people, real results. So again, really, really that kind of language that we're talking about having real people have these helps. And as you can see, we've got some reviews here of people just basically saying how much it really, really helped them. So these are our testimonials, essentially. So that's something from Noom. Then we've also got Results. It's another app that I found. It's a wellness and lifestyle app delivering the results you want. So this is a fitness app. And I think we're all used to seeing this kind of advertising where you've kind of got your before and after situation. So these are from people that have used the app and it's helped them, again, generally change their habits, wellness and lifestyle to basically be healthier. So generally weight loss, but also just making healthier choices and things like that. So we've got some testimonials from them there. Again, I said we're kind of used to this. Is quite odd, I think, as like an old-fashioned marketing technique. We have like a before and after picture. But obviously these are things that people have just taken at home. It's not got your like horrendous Photoshop situation going on. And they're kind of things that people have uploaded themselves. So it's the kind of thing you'd expect to get from a consumer research study. But can you just kind of take these reviews and put it into our advertising and not have to worry about any regulation? Absolutely not. There is advertising regulation that we always need to take into account. So for those of you who aren't aware, most adverts generally in the world, there are some exceptions, are regulated through ad self-regulation. What does that mean? What it means is you haven't got kind of someone that you have to go through with your advert and say, can you tell me if this is regulatory compliant? It's up to you. It's up to you, either as an advertiser who pays for the advertising agency responsible for the form and content, or the media that carry it. If you are any of those things, it's up to you to make sure that your adverts are compliant. So for an example, in the UK, you've got the ASA, Advertising Standards Authority. So what you have to do is go, okay, I need to look at their code of conduct. I need to make sure I understand what the rules are and make sure that the adverts I'm putting out there are going to comply with their rules. And then it's really just down to you. So does it mean that you can kind of go, well, I don't really bother to go through that process. I'm just going to put my advert out there anyway and hope for the best. It's a very, very risky game, because that's where people can complain about your adverts. And generally that's where the authorities get involved. So it could either be your consumers. They could look at this app and go, God, that looks really fake. I don't believe it at all. And they might report it. Or it could be your competitors, and often it is. So it might be if you've got a fitness app and someone else does, and you've got this like, oh my God, we've got the best results ever, we're so much better than all these people, and they look at that and say, no, our app's much better, and I also don't believe the reviews you've got on that at all. They could also complain to the Advertising Standards Authority. And again, they'll get into investigation. Basically, they look at your adverts, look at your evidence and things like that, and they'll decide whether you need to remove it or not. But don't be fooled, that's not the only thing. I mean, when there's a trend going on, the Advertising Standards Authority do often kind of go into these things themselves as well and have a look out for it. So basically, there's a lot of chance you can get tripped up by. Generally in the UK, it's just a case of removing your advert. But again, that could be very expensive. It could be a very expensive issue if you've got to sort of redesign your adverts and everything like that. And in other territories, it can be things like fines. China is quite severe with fines. The Middle East is very severe with fines. The USA has a kind of history of lawsuits, which you don't want to go down. So be very, very cautious and make sure you don't go that way. So yeah, make sure that you're looking, and also there's information, like I said, for every country. If you've got like a certain advert and you're like, oh, am I allowed to advertise in this way? You can contact them and ask them. So if the code's too broad and you're looking for something specific, always make sure to reach out and get some information there as well. So I wanted to talk about product reviews in particular, because as I said, that's something that we don't necessarily look at and think that's a advertising claim. But there is information about it from the Advertising Standards Authority. As an example, like I said, every country might have its own, but I'm just choosing the ASA as an example today. So what did they say? Now, they say marketers may not use testimonials to circumvent the code by making claims in a consumer review they would not otherwise be permitted to make. So what does that mean? It means that if they've got people saying that they've never slept better, this is the best they've ever felt and everything like that, and you've got all of these product reviews saying it, all of these app reviews saying this, actually it means that by this point it's really a claim that you're using to market your product. So therefore it needs to have data behind it to substantiate the claim, and you need to make sure you've got some kind of robust data behind it. So don't feel like just because it's an app or something like that, and you've got these reviews, you can use them. You do need to get some evidence behind it. So testimonials alone do not constitute substantiation. So marketers should not rely on testimonials as support for any direct or implied claims made in marketing communication. So be very, very careful and make sure you have the evidence. So what kind of evidence can you get? Well, the title of this webinar, as you're aware, is Consumer Research for Technology and Software. So what is consumer research? Consumer research are in-use studies, in-use tests are called, are basically to do with consumers' perception of a product. So particularly when we're talking about software and technology, obviously this applies for any kind of industry, but particularly for software and technology, unless you're making claims about, say, the speed of how it works, which is something to do with the technology, or anything to do with the technology itself. You're making any claims about the usability or the likability of the software or the technology, it has to be substantiated by consumer research data, because it has to be about a consumer's perception of the product. So there are always going to be in-home user studies, maybe that we use a focus group for technology itself, but generally we're looking at in-home user studies because people need to use it as they usually would. Like I said, my kind of two main categories I want to talk about are things like apps and gaming. Well, that's things that people are going to use at home themselves. So we want to reflect the actual conditions of the product in use. You can also look at comparison, as I mentioned earlier. And as I said, for other claims, you might need additional evidence. Like you can't say this is 80% quicker than another app, because a consumer can't say that. You'd have to have some kind of proof about the technology. But really, we want to look at these, at what they're having use. And again, this will give you your insight, the insight you need to be able to develop your product. So it's all very well and good me saying this, but let's put it into some actual context. So I've got a case study of a product we've done. I've kept things very, very broad because I don't obviously want to give away what the app was or anything like that. But it gives you a real overview about how we would test this kind of product. So this particular one was a multiplayer gaming app made by a leading global manufacturer of basically technological devices and also software. It was to gain insight from their key consumers. So as I mentioned, getting that target market, and looking at how they react to the game functionality. So how does it work on the mobile app? How did they find it? They wanted to look at both single and multiplayer. So it's got an online multiplayer function, or you can use it single player. And it's a substantial advertising claim to market the product based on consumer appeal. So again, what does the consumer really like about it? What can we quantify about their likes, and how then we can use it in our marketing? So what was the panel criteria? It was a US studies, because that was where they were looking at launching the app initially. It was for 18 to 35-year-olds. There was a kind of weighted 80% male, 20% female, again, based on their consumers, who they knew was going to play the game. They knew it was going to be a majority male. They needed to own a mobile device capable of downloading the application. Obviously, that's really important. We can't have people that have, like, if it's an Android app or an Apple app, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. It needs to be capable to download it. And they need to play a similar mobile game already. So basically, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of very replicant of other mobile apps that are already out there that are kind of like, I can't remember the word for it, but it's basically like a trial, what do you call it? Like, it's kind of like a one map game that you play over and over and over. We're not explaining it very well. But it needs to be something that they would use, they would already like to play with, basically. So basically what happened is they were sent a link, a special link that they could download the app onto their mobile, with. And they had to use the mobile app every day for 2 weeks. This was really important because, as we know with kind of new games, there's a certain engagement, right? So we know that 2 weeks is kind of going to give people the ultimate engagement we need them to have. If they play it a couple of times and they're like, oh God, I can't be bothered to play that again, then it's not really going to really work as a mobile app. They need to have at least 2 weeks of engagement. And they needed to kind of, again, assess the addictiveness of the game, because this is the kind of thing mobile apps are. So they needed to want to play it all of the time, want to play it every day. So this was to, they had to download the app on their mobile device, play for at least 30 minutes each day of the study. I'm really sorry, the wind has set someone's car alarm off, so I really hope that's not interrupting the recording. So they had to play with it at least 30 minutes a day. Everyone was asked to join at 4 specified times during the study to ensure they could join the online multiplayer capabilities. As you know, if you kind of do any software development, obviously you have, you'll be testing things in-house to make sure you can test people joining the app at the same time. Can they connect together? But again, this is that people using it across a wide area in the US. Lots of people trying to join all at one time to the online function so they could play together. So it's a really good time to test that and make sure that was all working. So what were the results? So again, we asked lots of different questions, and I've just selected a couple to give a representation of what the results look like and how they could be used from the study. So when we conduct a study, obviously you get a full report with lots of statistical analysis and things like that. But this is right at the end of the report, you get a table which looks a bit like this, which has your claim or your question, the number of people that had a satisfied response, the number of people that weren't satisfied, the percentage of those people that were satisfied, and the percentage of people that were not satisfied. And this helps us really draw quantifiable results from the data. So, oh God, I haven't put the overall number. How much does that work out? I think 204 people conducted the study. I think it was 204, yeah. 204 people completed the study in total. I just had to add together the satisfied, not satisfied. So this is what we were looking at overall. So for example, if you wanted to put in your advertising, 93% of people said they enjoyed playing this game every day. That would go into the advertising. And again, it's just helping our developers know this as well. So it was easy to join the multiplayer mode. A majority of people did find this, but as you can see, it's not as high scoring as the others, which gives a suggestion that some people did find difficulty. What is up to the developer to look at then is to say, okay, what is the expectancy? I mean, I don't really know, I don't develop apps, but is that a normal expectancy for people to be able to join at the normal time? Do we need to make any improvements? Is there anything we need to do before we launch this app there? 94% of people, though, would recommend this game to their friends, and 82% of people said they would pay for the game so they could continue to play it. So again, really good results there. They can even use it into their marketing or even use towards their product development. They've got a couple of options of how they could use it there. So I'm just going to give a quick summary, and then I'll be free for some questions if you've got any. So gaining consumer insight will have a huge benefit to your product development. As I said, there are so many little kind of things that can go wrong with software and technology, or in terms of how you're marketing it or anything like that. So getting that insight early on will really help you develop it and market it. And always consider your target consumer. Again, I've been really specific about that, but there's no point getting people to test it if they're not going to buy your game anyway down the line. You want to be really specific there. A well-designed study is really important for that valuable data. Obviously, if you haven't got the right study involved, you're not going to get the robust data you need. So making sure your questionnaire and study design is going to be really important there to get that right. It can maximize your advertising voice, as I mentioned. If you've got claims that people are liking, you can say that back to them. It's going to really help you advertise your product. Always make sure the data is compliant. As I said, look at the right advertising authorities and make sure you're compliant there. Always present your evidence really clearly to avoid any scrutiny, and always make sure that it's very recent. So when I say about recent evidence and presenting it clearly, you should say what year your evidence is from. So if it's going to be really dated, you don't want to have it in there because it's not going to be very reflective, especially with apps and software that kind of develop so much so quickly. It's really important we get that right as well. So I'm free for some questions now if anybody has got any. I also, as I said, I'll be sending out the recording. So if you do kind of have questions, you haven't got them right now, I'll be sending out the recording with my contact information. So you're very welcome to contact me at any time if you have questions that come up, or if you've got a project that you think this is applicable to and you'd like to discuss it as well. So I'll just allow a second, but to be honest, it looks like there's no questions coming in today anyway. So I'll finish up for today. So just to note that it's the IFSCC Congress in September next year. If you haven't already, make sure you register your interest, as we're really proud to be sponsoring it. I have one more webinar this month, and then obviously I'll release my lineup for next month. But for this month is compliant and effective advertising in the USA, and that's next Thursday. So please do feel free to join me. It'd be great to have you there. There's my contact information. As I mentioned, I'll be sending on email anyway. So thank you so much for joining today. I hope that people aren't having any issues, like I said, stuck in the storms today. And have a great weekend. Thanks. Bye.